2 meetings looking at potential departments that could be merged, and therefore result in savings to the operation of both the city and the police department. And I really want to commend them on their work on that, and I think that at your next meeting, that they will have a report to you on their beginning efforts. However, while I applaud those efforts, I am somewhat skeptical that anything will actually solidify to the point that it actually can have a impact on the budget that you will soon be presenting to the city for next year. And so, one of the benefits and hazards of having been in politics for a long time is that I was on the council before from 1987 to 1994. And during that time, the city and the police department undertook having discussions on merging the IT department into one function. Now we fast forward 30 years, and we're still having discussions on merging the IT department. So I think you all can understand my concern that while these talks about how we work together and how we could merge departments are very important ones to have, I don't unfortunately think they're going to be a solution to the 11.5% cut that we anticipate all departments needing to make, including our fire, our police, our public safety, etc. So I just, again, applaud their efforts. I think there are substantial dollars that could be saved without impacting the service to our citizens, but I don't know that we're going to reach a conclusion on any of those issues in time to impact this year's budget. But I do want you all to know that the 11.5% cut is a real number. All of our departments are going to have to do it, and so is the police department. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have, if you have any. Is anyone still there, or have I struck everyone dumb?
We heard you, Councilwoman. This is Mayor Lucas. Thank you.
Can you hear the mayor, Councilwoman?
I heard him say thank you. That was about it.
Okay. Yeah, he did say thank you.
Okay. I would just throw out, and again, this is just because I want everybody to understand the enormity of the situation we're facing. We have to cut $60 million. Other governments have done it a variety of ways. Some have just cut the salaries of all their employees. Probably the best example of that with a nonprofit is Children's Mercy Hospital, who reduced the salaries of their top staff by 25% and their lower level staff by, I believe, 10 or 15%. I mean, there are a lot of ways to crack this 11.5%. None of them are easy, but we all have to work together and figure out how to do it. So again, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. I apologize again for not being able to be there with you in person.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Councilwoman Hall, does that conclude your report, or do you have more?
It concludes my report, except for the fact that that was the first time that I have heard, and I don't know about my other colleagues, and I'll ask the mayor, but in all of our committee meetings and on the finance committee myself, I've never once heard 11.5% cuts. I've always heard 11% cuts. So I would ask the mayor, have we increased our cuts to 11.5, or did she make a mistake?
I have not heard 11.5 either. I've heard only 11%. And then to a point that I think all of us will make, this is the request from a finance department. I don't think the city, through its city council, has actually made a determination yet of any cut levels. So, but no, I've not heard the 11.5 yet.
So I think we need to go back and clarify with ourselves as a body to make sure that we're all talking on the same numbers before we come back to you again and say 11 or 11.5%, and what does that look like? So I will do my best to clarify that in the coming week, and then get back to you all about what's a real number, because we don't want to be jockeying the goalpost here. So thank you.
Okay, thank
very
you.
much for your time.
Chief Smith?
Good morning, everyone. First, I have a guest here, Pastor Chris Pinion. He is here with, where are you? Come on up, Chris. You go to the podium. Can we bring up those slides? Chris was here. He was our partner in taking it to the streets, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we've been working on for the past 12 weeks into the neighborhoods of Kansas City.
Thank you, Chief, for having us. Well, we experienced from July until just a couple of weeks ago on our Friday night fun nights, you'll see some pictures, is assisting the KCPD in these evenings where there are officers that truly care about their community. They truly love. And we were able to feed some kids that you could tell they were so happy to bounce on a bounce house. They had never done that before, or not on a regular basis, to get food and to just have community. To see the officers interact with the community in a real way, I believe makes a big difference. And we at Taking It to the Streets and at Life Quest Church are just thankful to partner with Chief Smith, the Kansas City PD. What I saw during those nights as we would go around to different parks at the different, around the different stations that KCPD has, is it made a difference. We were able to love on people, and we were able to show them that these officers are real people that love them. And you know how you can tell a difference when an officer is doing his job or doing it because he cares. And I saw officers time and time again doing it because they cared. And I wanted to thank the KCPD for the opportunity with Taking It to the Streets and Life Quest Church to serve alongside you to make a difference in Kansas City. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. This was a partnership. They donated all the food. We brought some of our people to the events, but we couldn't have done this without Taking It to the Streets and their donations of food, snow cones, popcorn, cotton candy, all the things for the kids. And we picked a different park in each of our 6 patrol divisions each week for 12 weeks, and we went around the city, and we just and sent out to neighborhood leaders, come on by, and people had dinner, and we just had great conversations. And it was a great opportunity for us to connect with the members of our community as we were policing.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. I also wanted to give an update on Operation Legend. I think if you didn't see, we put out a blog. We talked a lot about Operation Legend in the beginning and our federal partners coming to Kansas City to give us a hand with violent crime. When we started Operation Legend, we were averaging just over 5 homicides a week. Obviously, the reason why the Department of Justice picked Kansas City is because of our violence, but also our cooperation with our federal partners. During Operation Legend, those homicides dropped to just about 4 a week. At the conclusion of Operation Legend and about 2 weeks following that, our homicide average was just over 2 a week. So we had drastic decline in our trend in homicides, which we wanted, right? Everyone was asking, what are we going to do to work on this violent crime issue in our city? As a result of that, Operation Legend has not stopped. Even though our surge of federal partners, they've all returned to their home cities or onto another Operation Legend city. But some of the results that occurred from that is the ATF has now embedded sorry, I have my notes here, embedded 8 ATF officers with our assault squad. They work with us day in and day out on violent crimes and firearm crimes, illegal use of firearms that result in assaults in our city. We also have 1 analyst and 2 FBI agents that will now be permanently embedded with our homicide squads. So we've gained great partnerships in this and resources. We think this is actually absolutely making a difference in our city. I don't think there was a lot of controversy when it got started. I think the operation came off as planned, that it would be very surgical and it would look at violent criminals only. There wouldn't be a federal officers throughout the city doing any other thing other than working on violent crimes. The other part of this is that we all know is we can't arrest our way out of this, and that's why things like our partners have taken it to the streets, our Faith in Blue weekend, and Carl will have some more into that under his presentation, that they have to go hand in hand together. So I know I'm talking about Operation Legend specifically here, but I want everyone to know this goes hands in hand with our other opportunities and our other community outreach. So on that, on the budget is the last thing I have. I think we all are aware that we received the email back from City Finance a while back about the 11% budget. I put out a blog that talked about that to our community. I've been invited to several places to speak. The Chamber Board, Northland Neighborhoods. I was on the South Kansas City Crime Town Hall that talked about the budget, and the mayor was on there also. Getting to the heart of the matter, we've had some discussions about the budget and some other things. And just so we know, like when we talked about the budget reduction already this year at the $5.6 million and the 90 open positions, part of that was the restructuring of the airport police. That's the only piece of this that has not had any movement on it in any direction. So we're still waiting to see how that goes for this year in the final tally on the budget.
What's that mean? I mean, are we not getting paid for the Air Force complement, or what's the airport complement, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so when we started this 2 years ago, the idea was to move the officers at the airport police, and then those officers would be paid for out of the enterprise fund, not out of our department's budget. And we had talked with the previous city manager about this. We started things getting rolling, and then they said, well, wait till the first of the year. We waited till the first of the year, or the budget year, May 1st, and that didn't happen. And then there was some discussion about going back and reimbursing from May 1st as we move forward. But so far, there's been no movement on the officers getting reimbursed from the enterprise fund.
When you say no movement, I mean, Mayor, maybe you can speak to this. Does this mean that we're not engaged in the conversation with them about it? Does it mean that it's just kicking the can down the road? We don't have the money?
We've had some conversation.
I mean, if that was the deal, that was the deal. Why is it not happening?
Chief, I might speak to that. The chief's accurate in the description. I believe this was in some ways a deal that was made with the previous city manager, conversation with the department and the aviation department. The politics of it are the city manager changed. I think our interim city manager has left it kind of to the departmental level. The aviation department has had some level of fairly public resistance to that. And we're at a point where city council has yet to vote on such a recommendation. And so that's where the stalemate is. There are some, I think, who are opposed to such a move. There are two issues. One is the very simple, should the aviation department pay for the officers who are already there, which I think is a far less controversial question. The other is the broader replacement, supplanting of the police service up at the airport. I probably share a viewpoint with you in that at least the folks that are there now should be compensated for their services out of the enterprise fund because they're providing security at the Kansas City International Airport. And so that's just an ongoing budget battle, but right now it's between the departments.
What does public resistance mean?
Public resistance very simply means the city council actually has not voted on it, so that would be the one that's significant. I think there are some that are more broadly concerned with the Kansas City Police Department taking over policing at the KCI airport. And so that would be and we've heard that through public comments, many of the other things that are usually mentioned here as well. That's public resistance. Very different, though, in this situation is how do you get these folks paid for? And to be very candid, I think the issue is everybody's trying to retain as much budget as they can. That being said, unlike the city or unlike the department, the aviation department did receive a $41 million a federal, better word than a bailout, but a stimulus or something of that sort. And so we're still trying to work with them to get that. We have not yet been able to get it through the administrative staff.
I don't, and I don't know if that, when we talk about public resistance, and we talk about that a lot here in the last several months, and I don't know if there's a way to quantify that.
Yeah.
If 2 or 3 people express concern that suddenly becomes public resistance. But, so my question is, I understood that with this new airport, the expectation, the hope was that the police department would police that new facility. Is that not the plan? Is that up for debate? Where's that stand?
Yeah, so very simply, it's up for debate. The relevance of the public resistance point is if it were introduced as a city council ordinance, would such a thing pass? I'm not certain that if that was introduced as an ordinance right now, that it would pass for the full turnover of policing services there. Passing in the sense that, it's council ultimately that will approve it. On the simpler budget question, I think it is more likely to run into, actually I think it would be more likely to be successful. And so it might be as simple as getting the ordinance done and prepared, but at the same time you want to talk to the department, the aviation department, to make sure that they're not pushing back and trying to create, I think, more debate than is necessary. So that's where the dispute is. Simply, we've got an aviation department that disagrees in some ways, I think, with a path that, as I saw it, was actually launched by a previous city manager, and not having a manager right now that will make that call, then I think it's left to city council. City council hasn't been inclined to act. We will have a new city manager at some point, and so we'll see if either the administrative solution is it or if council action is.
So right now, is there a combination of KCPD and the former department that was there?
Yes, correct.
So who's paying the ones that are there, not KCPD?
Aviation.
Aviation still paying them. Okay. Sounds like a real challenge.
Okay, I think anybody else? Chief, go ahead.
Chief, during Operation Legend, what happened to our clearance rates?
Mark was going to have a little bit on that during his presentation. I hate to steal his thunder, but our clearance rate, our clearance rate has been as high as 73% this year, and we're at 68%, I believe, today. So we're above the national average. Obviously, with the increased workload this year, I think that's outstanding. The men and women of homicide have done an outstanding job, and obviously, it takes more than just them. It's everybody's involvement in this, from our patrol officers to our investigative officers and some of our other units. So it's truly a team approach, but I do want to give them credit that 68% is outstanding figure at this point of the year.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, we're going to have public comments. We're going to ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes. Got a lot of them, so Ms. Ferguson.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thought it was interesting to start off with showing the video of the police interacting with the children, because it just made me think of what would be the irony. How many of those children will become victims of the violent tendencies that we know that this department has? 2020 began still having detectives pay from their own pocket to reallocate witnesses, but the department instead spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on toys, equipment, and vehicles. Now, I'm not saying that all officers are bad. I myself have also met officers who have encouraged a business owner to give grace to a houseless person that was suffering with mental issues. A few weeks later, I saw that same... Please press any key on your keypad to remain in conference. That will not come from my time. I have also met officers who encouraged a business owner to give grace to a houseless person suffering from mental issues. A few weeks later, I saw that same officer graduate, so she had not yet been corrupted by this system. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen that the Kansas City Star front page article about how lack of trust in law enforcement drives gun violence. Later, the Star had a forum in which Major Deichler asked to give officers grace, speaking of the mental toll and how officers have had complaints that were substantiated, but they had also just witnessed horrific things like suicides or just leaving tense situations. So where was Cameron Lamb's grace as he de-escalated his own tense situation that very morning? He just went home to avoid a fight, to later be viciously killed by Eric DeValkeneer. Where was Donnie Sanders' grace the day after hernia surgery, when he, without a gun, was killed in our Kansas City streets by Officer Newton? Where was his grace? Deja, Ryan, Brianna, Troy, and I could go on, but I think you know what I'm talking about. I've talked to people on the other side, the super pro police, some of you even. You've shared how you're working to change policies, and that is so much more important than personnel issues. However, when your head, the chief, works to defend and keep on the force DeValkeneer, Pfeiffer, Brummett, Pritchard, Newton, you get the gist. You have an agent that is working on a Ku Klux Klan policing model. This is why we demand, and will continue to demand until it happens, that you fire this man right here, Rick Smith.
Okay, Reverend Chandler?
I greet you in the name of Jesus Christ, who loves judgment, hates wrongdoing, directs my witness and my work in truth, for he has made an everlasting covenant for those who follow his lead. I am the Reverend Nia Chandler. I'm associate pastor of the historic St. Mark Church, and I'm also with SCLC of Greater Kansas City. I stand here in solidarity with those who have called for the resignation of Chief Rick Smith. I stand here with those that have been in the public square demonstrating for weeks and have called for the resignation of Chief Rick Smith. For decades now, we have been seeking to transform systems, social, educational, political, and economic, systems that threaten the very existence of Black and brown people. For years now, SCLC of Greater Kansas City and other civil rights organizations have been seeking to call to the attention of the community the Kansas City Police Department police brutality. This is a defining moment in the life of Kansas City, one which is, if decided today, will transcend beyond today and will have a lingering impact on generations to come. Now, Chief Rick Smith, he was sworn in as the 45th Chief of Police. There are several that have taken the oath, and I want to bring your attention to that oath that states at the end of it that I will faithfully discharge all my duties as a member of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Force. So help me God. So help me God. So help me God. Because of those who have even the slightest measure in affinity with the doctrine of faith, we know that all of our help comes from God and only God, our strength and our Redeemer. So I stand here asking you, the Board of Police Commissioners, the God that I serve is a God of justice, but it's also a God of righteousness that exalts a nation. So help me God. Help me with seeking righteousness for Ryan Stokes, who was shot in the back 5 times. God, I know you care, but Board of Police Commissioners, do you care?
Reverend Taylor, your
Help
time
me,
is
God.
up.
We're seeking the righteousness for all of those who have been slain, who have lost their lives, whose families continue on in grief. I'm asking you, Board of Police Commissioners, I know God cares, but do you care? So help me, God.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Let's try to limit it to 2 minutes. We're not doing a very good job of it so far. We got Reverend Tyndall. Bishop James Tyndall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Board. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come to address you today. First of all, I want to acknowledge the video that was shown. However, Pastor, when am I going to be able to get my grandchildren to be not afraid of the police department? When am I going to be able to tell my grandchildren who are ages 16, 17, 18 years old, who drive every day, not to be afraid of the police when they stop them? When am I going to be able to stop training them about putting their hands on the wheel and let the officers see their hands? This is awful. And at some time or another, Pastor, you got to put that in the video. Then, Board of Police Commissioners, I sat here from 8:30 to this present time, and I saw a total of 2 African-American police officers come through this room. That's embarrassing. With all the police officers in this room, where are the officers of color? That should be a part of this agenda. What is wrong with that picture? There's something seriously wrong with that picture. I represent the Urban Summit. I'm also a former pastor of Metropolitan Spiritual Churches of Christ. I'm here today because our people, our community, have been asking for the resignation of Police Chief Smith, to be terminated from the force or to retire. Far too many incidences of police misconduct and failure to bring justice to officers who have killed or brutalized people of color. When we see what has happened in Buffalo, and we see what has happened in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and now in Philadelphia, how long must we suffer injustice by keeping this police chief?
Okay,
sometime sooner or another.
Thank you for your
You've
comments.
got to answer that question. Thank you, sir.
Reverend Vernon Howard.
Mr. Wagner and Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, Chief Smith, all of those who are here. My name is Vernon Howard, a native of Kansas City, born and bred here in Kansas City, educated and trained here in Kansas City, and virtually a lifelong resident, a graduate of the public schools of Kansas City, senior pastor of the historic St. Mark Church in Kansas City, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Kansas City, civil rights organization founded by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and 4 others in the interest of peace, justice, and the beloved community. I stand here today to speak for the dead and to speak for their families. The dead specifically, who have been harmed, brutalized, killed by the Kansas City Police Department, who have received no justice, and there has been no sufficient response to their deaths. For now 5 years, we have been at these commission meetings, in the streets, at City Hall, and throughout this city. Perhaps it is what God tells Micah to tell us. God has showed us, oh man, what is good and what the Lord has required of us. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Let this be the policy of the KCPD.
Judy Anil. Do we have Judy? Maybe it's Ansel? Judy Ansel?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Judy Ansel, and I am representing Kansas City Jobs with Justice. Kansas City Jobs with Justice is part of Missouri Jobs with Justice. We are an organization which supports economic rights, and we know that we don't have economic rights without racial justice. We stand in solidarity with the Kansas City NAACP, the Urban League, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in calling for the resignation of Chief Smith, or the firing of Chief Smith. For decades in the United States, the justice system has treated persons of color unequally, and the results have been deadly. They are deadly here in Kansas City. In the midst of a national conversation on policing, justice, and equality, Kansas City could become a beacon of hope for the whole country. Unfortunately, we've continued the same lack of accountability and tactics of intimidation that have created understandable unrest from Portland to Baltimore. This is from a letter we wrote to you last September. We did not receive any response, and so I'm reading it to you again. We hope you will pay attention. We continue to pay more and more and get less from law enforcement. Any day now, in fact, right now, we have matched the total number of murders in 2019, and it's only October. More and more money for police have not kept our citizens safe. In fact, residents, in particular Black Kansas Cityans, are often the victims of violent crime perpetuated by police officers. We were deeply disturbed by the assault of a 15-year-old boy by a Kansas City police officer in November of 2019, and perplexed by the fact that it took 9 months for the sergeant to be indicted. The Jackson County prosecutor, Jean Peters Baker, has stated that she didn't hear about the case until spring. When police officers are sheltered from consequences of their actions, it creates distrust across our city. We were shocked by police treatment of Deja Stallings, 9 months pregnant. Just this month, her treatment showed the utter contempt some police officers have for persons of color.
Ms. Ansel, your time is up.
Okay, we call on you to fire Chief Smith as just the first step. Thank you.
Okay, Carmela Geller. I may not have gotten that exactly right.
Good morning. My name is Gabriela Geller. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Bureau, AJC. In my official capacity, I represent the Jewish community of Kansas City. And the Jewish community, my community, really relies on our trusted partners in law enforcement to keep our community safe from those who wish to do us harm. But I think because of that, we understand that it is imperative to have the trust of the community in order for effective policing to occur. And what we're seeing is that that trust does not exist. We are at a pivotal moment in this country where we are having a collective reckoning of the racism that has pervaded our country since its founding, since before its founding. This is a moment that we could use to transform the relationship between the community and the police. But it's not gonna happen, with all due respect, with popcorn and snow cones. It's gonna happen with policy reform, and it's going to happen by listening to leaders in the Black community when they are telling you what they need for that trust to happen, for that relationship to be repaired. And you have those leaders in the audience today. And I ask you, on behalf of the Jewish community, who stands with our partners in the Black community, to listen to them when they are telling you what they need. Their concerns deserve to be heard and taken seriously. And I think in this way, we can all forge a new relationship that can better protect our community, that can better empower the police to actually do their jobs more effectively and protect the community. But it's really going to have to take some accountability of leadership. It's going to take transparency. It's going to take risk. It's going to take change. And it's going to take listening to the people in this room. Thank you.
Michael Fine. Let's try to limit it to 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name's Michael Fine. I also took note of those pictures you showed earlier, and all I could think about is with the number of murders going on, snow cones and popcorn is less, much less than the least you could do for the people gathered here today. I represent a network of young, socially minded, active Jewish people in the plaza, in Midtown, and all around Kansas City, Missouri. And we're here today to call for the resignation of the firing of Chief Smith and to demand everyone on this board gives an answer to the question of whether he should be fired. I watched online recently a conversation between Mayor Lucas and a group of students. The topic was policing and critical issues in policing. And a few of his answers really struck me. One of the things that struck me is when asked about the firing of Chief Smith, he said that there was no conversation going on, or at least he was not aware of one. Considering that those here today represent hundreds of people within Kansas City, the Urban League, the SCLC, considering that we've protested outside this very building, we marched on Kansas City for the firing of Police Chief Smith, it is either deeply ignorant or dishonest to say that there is not a conversation going on, or he's not aware of a conversation going on around the firing of Chief Smith. The other comment that struck me was that Chief Smith has a review process. As if the hundreds of people here today that are accusing him of obstruction of justice, of abetting police brutality, of not doing near enough, should be satisfied with his review process. As someone who also has a review process every year, I can say with certainty that if hundreds of people felt so strongly I was not doing my job well that they showed up in person to accuse me of obstruction of justice and of, again, not doing enough, I can assure you that I would be fired whether it was March, May, or June, and I would deserve it. Chief Smith deserves it. Thank you very much. Fire Chief Smith.
Justin Steen.
Hello, glad to be here, thank you. I am also with Missouri Jobs with Justice and want to echo our demand that Chief Smith either resign or be removed from his position. And solidarity with the people standing here today, all of us standing here today, demanding that Chief Smith resign or be fired. Thank you.
Gwen Grant.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I echo the sentiments of all of my colleagues here this morning as I stand before you saying that it's time for Chief Smith to retire, resign, or be reassigned, demoted, or fired. In any case, we do not have any confidence in his leadership. We have no confidence in his ability to build community trust and respect. It is obvious by his leadership and his feckless leadership over this department that there is racism inside the department and racism in the policies and practices and procedures that are perpetrated against our communities. In August of 2017, after being sworn in as Kansas City's new police chief, Rick Smith said he had 3 main goals set up. One was to set up employees for success, reduce crime, and build effective community partnerships. He has succeeded at none of his own goals and therefore should voluntarily step aside. Unless, let me get to the other piece that's really more critical here. He presides over a culture of corruption that breeds a pervasive disregard for the letter of the law throughout the police department. He has allowed his department to operate without integrity and accountability since his appointment, and the result has been an array of indictments of his officers, attempts by his office to conceal officer crimes from public scrutiny, dishonest community relationships, and a consistent abuse of power. The latest grand jury indictment of Sergeant Matthew Neal for felony assault of a 15-year-old child. And the road to his indictment speaks to the systemic shortcomings of the department void of virtue and Chief Smith's impotent leadership. The case of an officer slamming a pregnant woman on the ground and putting his knee in her back. The same officer who killed Donnie Sanders, and Chief Smith put him back in active duty after committing an act of violence. It shows a blatant disregard for the humanity of Black people. This chief must go.
Jude Hawker, something like that. Jude, or is that right? Forget about it. Ryan X.
So I am one of the protesters who slept in the tents for 21 days and 21 nights in front of City Hall for these past 3 weeks. And one of the moments when I was sleeping in a tent and laying down in a tent that struck me was when I saw a 2-year-old, because over 50% of the people that were protesting with us were actually houseless people. And I saw a 2-year-old sleeping on a mattress on the ground. And it made me start to think just about the juxtaposition that I noticed about the homeless people, the amount of homeless people that we had on the streets when an institution, a racist institution like this that we're sitting inside of right now, receives $273 million a year. $273 million a year. Over the last 8 years, there's been a 24% increase in the KCPD budget and a 48% increase in the amount of violent crime that's taken place in this city. For every $1,000 that this racist institution receives, only $1 goes to special projects for mental health in Kansas City. We have to talk about this juxtaposition, and more importantly, we have to talk about the blatant racism that is being perpetuated by racist police chief Rick Smith. And we just have to be honest about it. And I mean, we've seen the amount of people that have come up here today to speak their truth, to be prophetic witnesses, and to speak to the suffering of the black people here in this city. And this man is clearly does not have the moral aptitude, does not have the moral courage to do anything about what's happening in this city. And there's a man by the name of Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, he's the director of the Center for Anti-Racist Research at Boston University. He says that there's a difference between being not racist and being an anti-racist. And that's what I think that, you know, is the case with Police Chief Rick Smith. He may consider himself to be not racist, but I can tell you for certain that he is not an anti-racist. And he's not putting forth any policies that are anti-racist within this racist institution of KCPD. So number one, I think that we have to continue to speak, and I hope that you all have the moral courage, because violent regimes are not perpetuated by evil people. They're perpetuated by people that are spineless.
Sir,
and by
your time
people
is
that
up.
don't have moral courage. And so I hope that you all have the moral courage to take the actions that are needed to increase the amount of safety and livelihood and dignity that black people and brown people and poor people need in this city. Thank you.
Bishop Frank, I can't read your last name.
Douglas.
What is it?
Douglas.
Frank Douglas.
Good morning. My name is Bishop Frank Douglas, SCLC Urban League Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, and a cadre of notable area black organizers and actives continue to risk our lives to establish a new baseline against the inhumane treatment of black citizens. Commissioners, please vote today up or down. Is Police Chief Smith the right leader for continued command? I hope when voting you consider the disparities and poor leadership within zip codes 64109 through 10 and 64123 through 64132. Commissioners, all lives matter, including my life, your life, black and blue lives. I pray for the daily safety of our exemplary police, but let's admit there are some racist and bad police. The time is far spent, and the KCPD must implement policies and procedures that not represent just us, but improve the performance of serving and protecting all citizens without racial bias and unwarranted targeting. Bad police should be thoroughly investigated like our citizens within 24 hours if charged with excessive force, and if guilty, be suspended without pay and or terminated. Police guilty of fatal excessive force and second offenses of non-fatal excessive force should be ineligible for pension or national rehire if terminated. This look-away continuum and zombie politics is an insult of exemplary cops and defeats the good work of the best of the finest in blue. We hold bad attorneys and hospitals accountable. Our blue lives must be held accountable starting today. Police Chief Smith, unfortunately, has not fulfilled his 3 commitments. We have bad policing, and it's damaging our community's trust. Military policing.
Need to wrap it up.
Misappropriating millions of dollars in tax. Finally, no true black or blue community covenant will ever exist when excessive force injures and kills black lives. Police brutality must cease and desist by voting today if Police Chief Smith is the right leader for continued command.
Gloria Beam.
I would invite you to join me in taking a deep breath together. If you'd like to put one hand on your heart, and one hand on your head, take a full deep breath. Noticing what's in your heart and what's in your mind. Is it possible to connect the two with what you're feeling and doing what's right? Feel at the core of your being that you know what that is, that you know what the right thing is to do, and you have the moral courage to do it. Take another deep breath and think about this. We're going to do a quick partner exercise. You're going to pick somebody with a badge, anyone. I would encourage you to pick a partner with their size in consideration, as well as their restraint. You now have information about something that is provocative and a trigger to them. You're going to use it. You're going to say that to them right now. What happens next is up to them. Can they verbally de-escalate this situation? Where does it go? Where does it go? I don't know the ending, because I would like to say that there is verbal de-escalation if there is no weapon there, if there is nothing more than a provocation verbally. And they're unarmed. You're unarmed. I forgot that part. I can't say how it ends. I hope it goes well and that we all can continue to notice our breathing. Thank you.
Damon Daniel, wrap it up. 2 minutes, please.
Good morning. My name is Damon Daniel. I'm the president of the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime. Our mission is to be a community resource for violence intervention and prevention for individuals, families, and communities impacted by crime and violence. So for some, we are the emergency room for social services, and for others, we are the trusted bridge between the community and the criminal justice system. As the keeper of the bridge, I'm here to alert you all today that there are cracks and crumbles on the road ahead, caused by toxicity and some poor, unethical behaviors by men and women who wear the badge. Unfortunately, I'm also here to alert you that you don't have the right captain navigating you through the waters ahead. And therefore, I'm here to just simply encourage the Police Board of Commission today to take a vote. Take a vote by listening to what you've heard today, or what you've witnessed over the last few months, actually over this last year. Take that into consideration and take a vote. It's time to put this to bed and simply take a vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's it for public comments? No, I signed up outside. What's your name? Go ahead.
Fair warning, I'm not nice and I don't seek to be respectable. I'm not asking y'all for anything because y'all can't and won't be both my savior and my oppressor. I don't want reform. I want to turn this building into luxury, low-cost housing. These will make some really nice apartments to me. Firstly, stop using black children as photo opportunities because they're cute now, but in 10 years, they're black male suspect in red shirts and khaki shorts. Eating cookies and drinking milk with children does not absolve you of your complicity in their oppression and denigration, Rick Smith. Because Kansas City will spend more on police than education and then try to encourage children to feast with their oppressors. Y'all are really weird. It's asinine to be called radical or homegrown terrorists for not wanting government employees to kill citizens in any instance. So I'm not here begging anything of soulless white folks and self-preserving black folks. You get one life, and you all in this room have chosen profits over people, and that's pathetic. So I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes reading y'all for a filth, something I'm sure nobody has ever done. Nathan, the gentleman in the vomit-colored men's warehouse suit, in desperate need of Bosley and a haircut, a former FBI agent who exudes white privilege and is the epitome of mediocrity, and who loves Trump so much that he hired his former attorney general at his firm. And it's so sweet because he spent most of this meeting looking away with his head in his hands. Or Mark, Pastor Mark of Victorious Life Church on 34th and Paseo, where the mission is to provide a place and opportunity to worship Jesus Christ and preach a message of hope and faith through God's holy word in the building. Meanwhile, he's subjecting black people to terrorism and un-Christ-like behavior at the hands of KCPD outside the building. And Kathy, Miss, I'll get here before the other commission members, so I look as if I have empathy, and I'm excited to hear what they have to say. Meanwhile, I didn't have anything else to do at 8 o'clock in the morning but be rich and white and retired, so I'm here early. Or Don, owner of Wagner Investments, Blue Note LLC, and part owner of the Royals, another rich and white and disconnected and out of touch person with nothing but pure apathy seeping through the bulging veins of your paper-colored skin. You age like trash when you're racist and subject others to violence. And David, you don't get a vote, but it'd be a shame if your really progressive students at UMKC Block School of Management knew you were a cop lover in 2020. I don't think they would be a huge fan of that in 2020. In 1960 maybe, but this is 2020. And Q, had I not spent the entirety of the last 6 months dragging you, I would have more to say, but I don't. And Rick, I won't even begin with you, because I don't care enough about you.
Ma'am, your time is
to
up.
start, but you will have to spend overtime in a chapel at the end of your life. You have blood on your hands, and while these idiots hold you on a pedestal, God does not honor injustice and murder. Anyways, I'll leave you soulless, profit-driven, avaricious, greedy, God-forsaken humans, including anyone who works in this building, with one Bible verse from the Bible detailing the life of Jesus Christ, who was another unarmed black man murdered by authorities in the book you hellbound people claim to love so much. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? You're really funny. Kiki.
Okay, that's it for public comments. I don't think anybody else has signed up.
Mr. Wagner, in the name of Jesus Christ, we draw the line. There can be no longer conversation in this hall that deals with anything other than the justice of unarmed black men, the justice of young, old, black and brown people in this city, and police have not been held accountable. We draw the line in the name of Jesus Christ. We're calling for this commission.
You're saying you're not going to allow us to have our meeting?
In the instance of those who have been brutalized by this police department under this chief. In the name of Jesus Christ, we are calling for a vote on the dismissal of Chief Rick Smith. In the name of Jesus Christ, with the blood of our children deep in our hearts, we can no longer be silent. We can no longer shut up. For years, not weeks, not months, not years, we have testified in this hall. Ryan Stokes' daughter was one when he was shot in the back, unarmed, committed no crime, no suspect for doing anything wrong in our community. Yet his daughter now, 6, 7 years old, hurting, bruised, broken, his mother grieving every day of her life. And yet this commission and the previous commission and this mayor and the previous mayor disregards and disrespects the lack of
human dignity that you regard for them. We draw the line in the name of Jesus Christ.
We're going to adjourn the meeting.
In the name of Jesus Christ. Justice in this place. In the name of Jesus Christ. Justice in this place. No more. 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 No more.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Deputy Chief True, she in here yet? Yeah, oh yeah, there you go.
So my items are all located under tab B in your book. My first item is a supplemental appropriation for this fiscal year. On September 24th, the City Council passed ordinance number 200-811, which provides $90,000 to the department as a supplemental appropriation from the DOJ for the Burn JAG grant. The $90,000 is used for salaries to support KC Nova social service caseworkers. I recommend acceptance of the appropriation and an increase to the city revenue account and appropriation account.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Tolberg.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Dean. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. The second item is budget transfers. The $440,000 general fund budget transfer is needed now to move funds for the detention personnel salaries, and the $19,543 transfer will adjust grant appropriations to where they are needed now compared to where they were estimated in the fall of 2019. I recommend approval of the funds transfer request.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Second, Lucas.
Moved by Commissioner Garrett, second by Mayor Lucas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next item is the Missouri Western Interdiction and Narcotics MOWIN Task Forces. The department is subawarded $243,883 from the Department of Public Safety. From this, the department will pass through $218,361.13 to the Platte County Sheriff's Office in the form of a subaward, and the department will pass through $61,866.94 to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office in the form of a subaward. I recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Tolberg, second by Commissioner Dean. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The next item is the Midwest HIDTA Drug Task Force Initiative modification to our grant. The department has recently received modifications for the 2019 HIDTA Metro Drug Task Force Initiative. The first modification increases the award by $6,100 to pay for training for a single-purpose narcotic detector class, and the second and third modification both offset each other. The U.S. Marshals Service transferred $20,275 from their HIDTA initiative to our Metro Drug Task Force to purchase radios. The Office of National Drug Policy Control later determined this was an unallowable purchase and decreased our award by that amount. The HIDTA Metro Drug Task Force Initiative Award is now $990,188, combined with the HIDTA Violent Crimes Task Force in the amount of $139,857. It creates an overall award amount of $1,130,045. I recommend these modifications be approved.
So moved by Lucas.
Second.
Moved by Lucas, second by Commissioner Dean. All in favor say aye. Aye. So moved.
Thank you. The next item is our uniform bid for police uniforms. On October 14th, bid number 2020-2 was open for a one-year contract to provide new uniform items with the option to renew for 3 additional one-year periods. 2 vendors responded, and Galls is a recommended vendor with an annual anticipated expenditure of $489,760.08. Galls is located in North Kansas City, Missouri, at 2720 Burlington, and is used by the KCATA, KC Fire, and many other local police agencies. They are currently our vendor for our uniforms, and I recommend approval.
So, you said Galls is in North Kansas City?
Correct, they are.
Okay, so their parent company is in Lexington, Kentucky?
That is correct. They were Alomar Uniforms, and now they are part of Galls Uniforms. They're LLC.
Gotcha.
Of that.
Okay, so moved.
Second, Lucas.
Moved by Commissioner Tolberg, second by Mayor Lucas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
My next item is our communications unit update. Currently, we are at 97. We are down 9 people from our TO of 106, but we do have 3 additional hires that will start on 11/2 of 2020 in our call taker class. And my next item for general discussion is the budget presentation. You should have all received the budget transmittal letter and the schedules. We do have to, per Missouri revised state statutes, we do have to have your approval to send that over. We have estimated the amount of money that it will take for the department to run in this following fiscal year. It is a decrease of 0.4% from our current budget. So then we would like your approval to send our recommended budget over.
I move approval.
Second.
If I may, on a discussion, I'm going to go ahead, and this may be different than past practices, but because I might have a disagreement ultimately, I won't vote for a budget I approve, but then try to make some modification on later. So I'll just abstain on this.
I couldn't quite hear that.
He's abstaining on the vote?
Abstaining? Oh.
Abstaining. Dean moved, Garrett seconded.
I'm sorry, who moved it?
Dean moved.
Dean, okay.
Garrett second.
Dean, aye.
You don't need a roll call.
Okay.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 4-0.
1 abstention.
Thank you, and that completes my report.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Chief DeHill.
Yes, sir. My item's under tab C. It's the Academy class summary. It's virtually unchanged from last month. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to address those.
No questions. I don't hear any questions. So you have a general discussion?
I do not.
Do not, okay.
I do have 2 items under tab J for consent agenda. Not sure how you want to proceed with these. I can highlight some of the changes. This first one here, secondary employment policy, has a number of changes. We had forwarded these to Commissioner Dean, I believe, early last week.
Which tab is this?
Tab J.
I don't see in that, there are a lot of changes, as you note in that. That's a policy that matters, for sure. Not that they all don't, but in varying degrees. But there's no summary that I saw. Did I miss it?
There was not a summary with this. That was what was forwarded to Commissioner Dean, just highlighting the changes. I can roll through those if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant policy. I'd like to have, other than just my own eyes going through and reading, however many pages this is, to have some discussion and identification of changes that were made.
Yes, sir.
What I might ask is time of the essence, because if not, I might ask for you to let us review it until the next meeting.
Sure.
So can we do that at the next meeting?
But it's not one or the other, in that I still want a discussion and identification of sort of the key areas of changes that have been made.
And remember, I look at the summaries that are provided, but I don't write the summary.
Okay.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
Isn't that what we agreed to? If I've got that wrong, tell me.
No, that's how I understand it as well.
Okay.
So then who writes the summary? Okay.
And the problem comes when I want to change the summary. But so far, you didn't give me one, so I didn't have to change it. But and I do want to see it.
Okay.
So we'll put that off until the next meeting?
The only thing, again, just by way of reminder, I understand these policies go through an entire process, and I'm well familiar with the process. We have the benefit of none of that. So when these policies get to us for approval, we have not been a part of their birth or their maturation, none of it, the discussion, none of it. So it's really important that we're given that summary so that when we review that document, it identifies for us what those material changes are. It's just really hard to come completely cold into a policy and review it and really get a good comprehension in the time that we're given to render approval or disapproval.
Well, and to your point, Commissioner,
the summary should bring you some context also why we're doing this. And I think
Right.
that's even as important as the changes themselves.
Much more important.
So could we get that,
You bet.
plenty
Well-
of time before the next meeting?
Yeah, well, we only have a couple weeks till the next meeting, but we'll get on it right away and get it out to you.
Well, I mean, you've already got it, kind of, don't you?
Right, in my notes, I have all the highlighted changes. There are a lot of changes, but there's not as many as it would look by all the asterisks, because those are just terminology changes to the policy, and so any change, we put an asterisk there.
Put a little summary with it, and
Yes, sir.
let us review it.
Yep.
and We'll look at it at the next meeting. Okay, is that it?
Well, the second one does not have as many changes. It doesn't have a summary, but, okay. We'll hold both of them until next month,
The alert
next meeting.
notifications, did that worry you, Nathan?
Is that it then?
Alert
Yes, sir.
notifications?
No.
The alert
Okay.
notifications, I think you don't need a summary. I mean, it's short and it's not difficult unless,
Deputy Chief Francisco, let's go to investigations, Bureau reports.
Before we start, Mr. Chair, I think Commissioner Dean had,
there were two under the consent agenda. One of them was the alert notifications, which is just the amber alert, the silver alert, I can't remember. Pretty short, doesn't really need a summary, and I think we could approve that today. So I would move approval for that one today. So all we need is a summary of that much longer one for next time.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Dean,
second, Lucas.
second by Commissioner Lucas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ready? I am ready.
Okay.
I've been ready for so long, you have no idea. You'll find my information under tab D. To date, there have been 154 homicides compared with 125 in 2019 at this time. There were 115 in the same time frame in 2018, 123 in 2017, and 104 in 2016. I was going to talk briefly about our clearance rate, but that was well covered by the chief earlier, so we'll move on. In September of 2020, we've had 53 shooting victims compared to 38 in September of 2019. To date, in October, we've had an additional 50 bullet-to-skin shootings. Drive-bys are 401 year-to-date compared to 332 year-to-date last year, 53 of those being in September compared to 30 in September of last year. We've had 220 firearms recovered in September compared to 199 in September of last year. 1,889 year-to-date compared to 1,842 year-to-date 2019. If you have no questions about the statistics, I have one other brief thing to go over.
Well, the shootings, 50 in September?
53 shooting
September.
victims,
And then how many in September of last year? Do we know?
38. All year, we've been trending ahead, much like homicides in our bullet-to-skin shootings, so it's...
But in October and November, we haven't trended ahead.
Well, October is yet to be completed, but with 50, I'm sure we'll be trending ahead of last year as well, already this month. Other than the closed session item that we're trying to get some technical help on, I do just have one other thing to mention real quick. We participated in our semi-annual drug take-back. This is where we encourage people to turn in prescription medication that's no longer needed. And through our partnership with the DEA, Missouri Western Interdiction and Narcotics Task Force, we collected 2,508 pounds of unneeded narcotics in the metro area, which is a fantastic way. This partnership's been going on for many years, and it's a fantastic way to keep drugs from falling into the wrong hands and dispose of it properly. So I just wanted to mention that we participated in that, and that's all I have if you don't have any further questions.
Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you. Sean?
Good afternoon, sir. I'll start with the backlog at the crime lab. Again, through the end of September, generally the trends are favorable as far as the backlog. One huge note for us at the very top where you see the total backlog under October 2020, that total is 767 total cases that are backlogged. That is a 10-year low for us. Director Weiner and his folks are working very, very hard to reduce that overall number. In every area, we're looking good as far as backlog, except for 3. Those are digital, trace, and latent prints. All 3 of those are due to manpower issues where we're short of people. And since we have a freeze on, that will continue to go up in those 3 areas. The rest, we are very well staffed as far as DNA, crime scene, and firearms. We're doing very well where we're fully staffed. Director Weiner is working with his personnel to cross-train to see if we can reduce some of the backlogs in the areas that we're actually up in, and we'll continue to monitor that. If there aren't any questions with regard to the lab, I'll go to the Human Resources Personnel Summary. Again, our budgeted strength is at 1,375. That has not changed. Currently, we're at 1,322 officers. We do have 2 that are in an outside academy class that have been recycled due to injuries. So right now we're showing 53 vacancies. With their successful graduation, that will go down to 51 vacancies when they graduate. I do have an interesting note. The chief and I were talking with regard to retirements, and so the numbers I'm about to tell you are current to date. In 2019, current to date, we had 30 retirements. So far this year in 2020, we're at 36 for an increase of 6. The total at the end of December in 2019 was 61 retirements for law enforcement. We think we probably will surpass that number this year, but currently we're at 36. The big difference between last year and this year is when we had folks retire last year, we ran academy classes to help backfill. Whatever we lose this year until the freeze is lifted, we lose, and there is no replacement. And it generally takes over a year to get them trained, get them off break-in and off probation. So I'm just letting you know that our numbers are going to start going down with no relief in sight. And the last thing I have is the post-employment health plan, which the board approved last month, the policy. There are some documents that have to be signed in regard to that policy for Nationwide. And so I have Captain Greg Williams and Civilian Kathy Vestal here to discuss those documents and answer any questions with regard to the PEP program.
The post-employment health plan, PEP is what we call it, policy that allowed us to move forward with the documents. Nationwide needs to create the trust and hopefully begin this November 1st. If you prefer, I can go over the documents that we're requesting a signature for, or I can answer any questions you have for time.
Any questions? You want to hear anything about it?
No, sir.
Yeah, okay, well, I think we're fine.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I had, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Oakman.
Yeah, Colonel Oakman's off today. Major Steve Young filling in for him. We have a slideshow like we usually do. We'll go through it quickly. Then we have a few other things. So I'm not sure how we came about this picture, but officers got out of the wagon in their cars to help push a car off of a bridge that was stranded. On the next one, up north, Shoal Creek Patrol Division got together to have a family fun night. I'm sure that was low-calorie cotton candy in that picture. Also up north, yeah, this continuation. Chief was present. 99-year-old veteran fought in the Battle of the Bulge, attended. The Faith and Blue weekend. More of our engagement with pastors in the community. They handed out 311 boxes of food, gun locks, and LED light bulbs. Next one honored a family of a former Kansas City police officer, John Ober. And the next one is more Faith in Blue. Some food giveaways, peace parade, vigil. Next one looks like one of our traffic officers came across a cat that was hit by a car. That cat did get to the PrEP project and is expected to make full recovery. And the last one, through our social workers and our district officers, came across a family that was having a lot of problems, had a lot of needs. Apparently we had a connection, and we do have a lot of connections out in the community, but one of them, this Dr. Lask, stepped up and provided the funding to get this family back on their feet to a certain degree. So a public thank you to Dr. Lask. And the last one is a few pictures from our peace parade that happened down at South Patrol Division. If there are no more questions or comments, I'll move on. Thank you, Dan. In terms of the monthly report, there are a few things that Colonel Oakman wanted me to highlight in his absence. More so in the traffic summary second, but a few in the crime summary up front. Violent crime is up 7% from 2019, but it's down 13% from last year. Our response times are up slightly, but they are still down from 2018 and 2019. And lastly, year to date, we've received almost 728,000 calls for service, and 305,000 of those have been handled alternatively. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the traffic summary. Okay, in the traffic summary, year to date, we've had 81 fatalities. That's compared to 54 in 2019. Of those, in 2019, it's notable that 21% involved drugs or alcohol, but so far in 2020, that number's increased to 54%. We also added a new page, it's page 13 of the traffic summary. It shows the days of the week and the times of the day that we're experiencing fatalities. And it is pretty notable that they generally and largely are on weekends and late at night. But another thing, we've asked Sergeant Corey Carlisle from the DUI section to come and talk about what they are seeing in terms of intoxicated driving that we think is definitely leading to an increase in our fatalities. So Sergeant Carlisle.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Corey Carlisle at the DUI section. I wanted to talk to the board specifically about what we've been observing. Last year, the DUI unit set a record for the 2020 grant year. We processed, with 6 officers in DUI unit, processed 1,046 DUIs. From 2018, that was 536, and in 27 is 327. So we doubled our numbers from 2019 in regards to DWI impairment. I would like to start off by talking about marijuana and its effects on fatality crashes. I did a review and study on 3 studies that involved the AAA study from January 2020 in Washington State, Rocky Mountain study for September 2020 in Colorado, and the Mothers Against Drunk Driving study, the cannabis report from 2020. In this section, it explains on when they legalized marijuana for recreational use in 2012 to 2013, that fatality crashes involving marijuana tripled almost immediately after the legalization of marijuana. And then it flatlined with double the numbers years subsequent to that. Some of the issues that Washington State has dealt with in regards to marijuana fatality crashes is drivers who tested positive for marijuana stabilized about twice after they implemented their program. And in Colorado, in 2013, after they implemented legalized marijuana for recreational use, marijuana fatalities, crashes who tested positive for marijuana increased 135%. And overall traffic crashes increased 24%. So the standing notion is that there's been a double increase in marijuana-involved fatal crashes from the time the marijuana was legalized. Now, moving to the MASS study, in which they did just kind of a general study across the United States, which tested about 1,020 adults aging from 18 years and older, asking them general questions about understanding the effects of driving while impaired under drugs. This study concluded that 41% of people believed that driving under the influence of marijuana was safer than driving with alcohol. Another 41% believed that those who routinely use marijuana were not generally impaired and they were safer to drive. And 79% of those surveyed said they don't hear anything about the effects of driving high in regards to media or social media. So for stats for KCPD 2018, 19, and 20, in 2018, approximately 25% of fatal crashes involved marijuana impairment or a combination. In 2019, that number increased from 25% to 31%. And in 2020, as the Major stated, we are looking at 54% in that case. So AIU's general synopsis is that 90% of the crashes that we deal with involve some sort of marijuana or a combination of marijuana, which is considered polydrug use. So on the fatal crashes increased from 35% in 2017 that were involving impairment, and now we're at 71% for 2020, and we still have a couple of months to go. So that's direct correlation to what Colorado and Washington State have seen in their impairment stats. We're almost doubling ours, and marijuana is not even legal in Missouri yet. We just decriminalized it. So we haven't not reached the apex of the crisis that's going to come in regards to this phenomenon, and we can expect those numbers to triple, to double and triple going forward. So that's the information I have. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see.
And that's all from the Patrol Bureau.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Atterbury.
Good afternoon. My information is under, let me see, tab G. And the first item that you have is the regular monthly report. Underneath the first, behind the first divider page is the follow-up from an appeal from last month that you all had received and asked for some additional information from the appellant. I think you all wanted to see about the terms of his separation from the other law enforcement agencies that he had worked for. And I believe that information is provided for you at this time in the book. So if you all want to, if you have any questions on that, feel free.
Well, is this where we should vote on his appeal?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this the appeal for Mr. Schnell?
Mr. Schnell, who was in the audience earlier today, but he didn't get an opportunity to say anything.
He spoke last month.
Last month, yeah.
Yeah, in the city council chamber.
So anyway, this guy's, looks like he's been okay with 3 police departments following his termination from the Kansas City Police Department, and has done this kind of work in other jurisdictions and pretty aggressively trying to get a private security license, private with a private security firm starting up. So I think we should consider upholding his appeal.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Snell be granted his license.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The next item under the second pink divider is an appeal of a Mr. Giglio from an October 16th denial of an unarmed license. He was denied based on the fact that based on the terms under which he left the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. He provided you with additional information about that incident, some information about that, and he also explained what his purpose is for wanting a Kansas City, Missouri license. If you all have any questions for me, feel free.
This is unarmed.
I believe it is. Yes, unarmed.
So, again, I think we should consider his appeal, unarmed license as a security officer. Any discussion? Can we get a motion to approve his appeal?
When was his termination?
I believe it was in 2015, and I think he technically retired or
He had
left.
25 years on.
And he, if that's correct, yeah, he did. He retired and under threat of termination.
Do we have any understanding of what his personnel situation looked like independent of that?
Independent of the situation that I do not. I don't know if anybody else here would have any information they could add.
That was the only issue in his record that came up. That was that incident. Otherwise, I believe his jacket was pretty clean.
It was a time and attendance issue that gave rise to the termination recommendation?
It was basically that. I think there were some policies, some like recovered property, some other things like that that were also included. That was the majority of it.
Does the department have a position on this?
You know, my position is he's already gainfully employed. He's just in North Kansas City. I'm sure they want him to be able to go to the complex out south. Unarmed position, I don't see that as being a huge issue. I guess, if it moved to an armed, then that might be further discussion, but he's already employed by the company.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Move. You got it, Commissioner Garrett, second by Commissioner Tolberg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go.
And I have nothing further.
So we got Director Bennigan's no longer here. The OCC reports are in the book. We have an audit committee update at all?
We had an audit about the communications unit, I believe in April, and the request by many of the people in the unit was to go to a 12-hour shift, and the board asked us to investigate that. We've done that investigation, and we don't have enough employees to be able to do the 12-hour shift, but we think that we can do a 10-hour shift, and I'm meeting with all three watches of communications today. Unless, of course, this runs until 4:30 or something, but.
No, it won't.
But I will be here at 11 if you all want to come then. But anyway,
Well, you'll be early. We know that.
I'll be early for that meeting. Colonel True and I are working on this, and I think we should have something by the next meeting. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Kenner.
Yes, I've got just a cleanup from June of 2020. The board had ratified the new OCC policy, but we need to correct. We had pulled that because there had to be some corrections done to it based on some additional changes. And so I want to, the OCC has asked us to formally recognize that the new, quote unquote, new OCC policy is rescinded. And so until we get the corrected policy. And so I just need because we had, if you recall, we pulled that when it turned out we were going to make some changes to it. And so Merrill had asked.
I move that we rescind the one that was adopted in what month, David?
June.
In June.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Dean, second by Mayor Lucas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Mayor Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to present a resolution to the board for consideration. It has been circulated to all of you, based in some ways on our conversation with Acting Deputy Chief Dole. I think it'd be worthwhile for us to take some time to consider it. So I will, because there are some changes that are before you today, ask that we have a chance to take a look and then review and discuss for next month. A few other items I do want to note, and I will just speak briefly to the public comment. It is my professional job to listen to people say all types of things. I do that a lot. I've seen the chief of police say that a lot too, but I would hope that our friends in the activist community do allow us all to speak as well and to make sure we can actually have meetings where we get the public's work done. I don't know if there's anybody on this board who's ever turned down an opportunity to listen. Listening doesn't always mean that we'll agree, but we've worked very hard to do that. I will note the chief of police has done that as well with a lot of different groups. And so rather than some of the invective that I think we saw today, perhaps we could get to a productive place if everybody's willing to come, talk, and listen as well. And we'll remain committed to that because I know that's what we do. I will also say I thought the personal insults were wholly uncalled for. I'm kind of used to that, but hopefully we get to a place where we can try to do better for the safety of everyone in our community long term. That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Garrett?
Nothing.
Commissioner Dean?
Yes, I echo what the mayor said, but in one respect, the public comment about the fact that we don't have as many minority officers as we would like. I want the public to know that that is important to the board, and the board and the department have been working on that. And as a matter of fact, the academy class that we had to cancel because we didn't have enough money had more minorities and women than we'd had in many other academy classes, and we had to just cancel that because of money issues. But the board wants more minority officers, and we are working on different strategies to try to get more minority officers. And if there are people in the public that want to see that, we would encourage them to have them apply whenever we have money to hire officers. But it is a priority of this department and of this board. That's all I have.
Commissioner Tolbert?
Nothing.
Okay. I'd just like to say that I don't, you know, I think it's understandable the problems we have recruiting and retraining police officers based on not just what went on this morning, but on few other incidents that have happened. For example, the statue of the fallen police officer was defaced. We have arrested a suspect. Haven't charged him with a crime yet. We had an attorney out at this little tent city that use the media to threaten us, threaten our officers. She said, "We know where you live. We know your children's teachers." You know, nobody should be threatening our officers and their families. I don't know who we individuals who she's talking about when she says we, but you know, these comments pile on, and you know, it doesn't help our situation at all. And so, you know, how do we? Then you get calls for the chief to resign. He's one of the most widely respected chiefs in the country. Just shouldn't happen. So how do we help others understand that if we don't stand up against these threats, then Kansas City will not have sufficient officers to answer the 700 urgent calls we get every day to 911? And that's pretty much all I had to say. Need to move for adjournment.
Do we need to go back into close?
I think we do. Do we need to go back into close? We do, don't we?
So I'll move that we adjourn this open session.
Second, yeah.
Lucas, aye.
Garrett, aye.
Dean, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Wagner, aye.
I move that we go into closed session.
Second.
Dean, aye.
Lucas, aye.
Garrett, aye.
Talbot, aye.
Wagner, aye.